The Tomb Raider Legend Anniversary Underworld Timeline. This is a series that, if you would talk to some Tomb Raider fans, this is a series that doesn't necessarily get a lot of mention. And maybe there is a reason for that. Now, of course, it came out as Legend, first with Legend, then Anniversary, which was also coincide with the 10-year anniversary, I believe, of Tomb Raider. And then Underworld. But, ironically, they are more in a timeline with Anniversary being first, Legend being second, and Underworld, still in the last place. And this is the second timeline that we have for definite of the Tomb Raider games. But it also changes some details that are touched upon. There's always been a deciding event that is mentioned in all the Tomb Raider games. That Lara Croft always survives a catastrophic accident. This timeline also has the fact that both her parents are interested in archaeology and research. In fact, it is a driving factor in this case. You see, as is revealed in Legend, first game released, Lara and her mother, their plane crashed in the Himalayas in Tibet. They end up finding their way to a Tibetan monastery, and ends up being the point when Lara's mother disappears, thus fueling Richard Croft in his search for Avalon and the afterlife. We don't get that mention here. At least it's part of what we learn about the series. Now, if we go with chronological events, we would then recreate the events of the first game, the first ever Tomb Raider game with Anniversary, which changes some things, makes it a little bit more accurate in some areas, and with a more relative flow, given how the game was designed. You see, Lara gets offered a job by Jacqueline Notla. We know how evil this bitch is. Of course, Lara doesn't understand it. But the thing Notla wants Lara to find is the Skion, a piece of the Atlantean Skion. But Natla also has Larson following her, because Natla knows that Lara will not up and give up this item. As she states to Larson, Lara is just like her father. Which means that's our first hint, at least in the second game, that Natla knows a little bit more of what's going on and helps tie it to the to Legend, which was released prior, of course. Now, as we talk about anniversary here, it's kind of hard not to just say it. It's a very faithful update of the first Tomb Raider game. It reduces some parts of the game, shortens some others, changes the puzzles around, and in some ways make it make a little bit more sense. Of course, Lara finds out that Pierre is after a piece of the Skion. And I gotta say, this timeline didn't do Pierre a lot of justice. I like Pierre in the original. While he was smarmy, I mean, he had a head of hair in the original, but in this one he was bald. And believe it or not, this goes a little bit better with Lara not necessarily wanting to off people, which was always sort of a. You didn't have many human enemies in the first game. And the only ones you really have to fight were the ones that you couldn't necessarily reason with in this game. Well, in this trilogy, I should say. Lara would rather try reason with human beings than flat out blasting them to hell in this timeline. Of course, mercenaries can be hard to reason with since they're being paid to shoot first. Well, as things play out, of course, we go through the whole, getting the ski on. And Lara is more interested in the background of it, too, and figuring things out. In fact, it helps her figure out who Natla is. Berate Natla, too. I mean, why would you turn against your other ones? You were just crazy for power. But Natla also sees something in Lara. I mean, she offers her a chance to sit as one of the rulers. But Lara is not after that. And of course, we have an epic battle with Natla, apparently leaving Natla left for dead. But, that's not the case. I mean, Lara leaves knowing that there's something more going on, and she's going to look into it. But now let's head to the timing of Tomb Raider Legend, where Lara is investigating something in Bolivia. Which, of course, is being tracked by mercenaries working for a gentleman named Rutland, who has a mysterious individual with him. One that, when he mentions their name, touches a little bit on a nerve. The name being Amanda. The mention of this name prompts Laura to go back to Peru to look into what happened down there a few years prior. And we start learning some things. We learn that there are some things of power down there, probably from an ancient prior civilization. We also discover that the person that Laura thought long dead, Amanda, actually survived. Of course, we wonder about that because there was this creature down there. Seems like Amanda had managed to tame this beast. But we also learn that they are looking for a weapon of power. The only thing that can actually defeat this thing. We also have learned that all these sites have something in common. A similar structure. Similar to the structure that was the key in Laura's mother's disappearance. We are also seeking something that can be likened, well, is actually supposed to be Excalibur. But it has to be reforged. That's this thing that can defeat this monster also. Of course, to obtain it, we have to get all the pieces. One of which is held by a Yakuza man in Japan. We also have to fight Rutland for an item or information to get more pieces together. We even head to jolly old England to find the tomb of King Arthur, which is apparently under King Arthur, a King Arthur exhibit. And at first, you think, no, it's not really here. But no, it had a fake tomb set ahead of it, as Laura mentions. I must admit that when you do that part of the game, while it is trying to get through the traps and all that, it's actually fun to hear Zip and Alistair squabble about Excalibur. And the sword in the stone. I mean, let's face it, many of us growing up probably didn't realize that Excalibur and the sword in the stone were not the same sword. Of course, now altogether, Laura finds all the pieces she needs, except one. Of course, she also has to fight a big nasty serpent just to get out of there. Or possibly two, I don't know. Never did figure that one out for myself. Which takes her back to Tibet. Seems that Laura's father was also looking into all this, too. Maybe Natla was after it for a reason. Of course, then he betrayed Natla. Because he figured things out before, faster than, her not thinking he would. Well, after he does a lot of fighting, and, well, she does a lot of fighting and going back to Tibet and surviving through all that, she manages to reforge Excalibur, or what is to be Excalibur, and then return back to Bolivia. And our face off against Rutland and Amanda and her pet. I mean, let's face it, the whole thing to seek things out took Laura all over the place, including to a deserted Russian lab, Soviet lab, and solving puzzles that are more because of the situation than anything else. So in the end, you have your epic battle in that last section, to which, after defeating Amanda and her pet, Laura manages to use the sword for what it's for, which in turn reveals that it opened a portal due to its configurations between time and space. Young Laura witnessed her mother speaking with someone in the portal. Not that they could see. And Laura, realizing what's going on, tries to prevent the tragic accident that took her mother in the first place. Unfortunately, Amanda, just allows, makes it certain that history repeats itself. Laura is enraged at Amanda and finds out that the portal took Laura's mother to Avalon, the afterlife. She doesn't outright kill Amanda. It just reminds her that every day she breathes was a gift from her. And then, well, we get into the events of Underworld, which the game starts with us in the middle of the game as we flash back to prior events, when Laura is searching more into the various underworlds, leading her to the Mediterranean and checking out a site there which seems to take her to Niflheim. And or one of the various underworld areas that would be covered in Norse mythology, to which she finds the device that would be the Gauntlet of Thor. Everyone remembers the hammer, but nobody remembers that Thor also had a gauntlet that helped him wield the hammer, as well as a magic girdle that enhanced his strength. Of course, goons come in. Laura, defeats them after they've surprised her, but she follows them back to a ship that Amanda is on. And Amanda has a captive slash partner, Jacqueline Natla. So Natla survived the destruction of Atlantis. Of course, Natla takes a little enjoyment in taunting her captor, but she does also give Lara some help of where to look next. In an area that could be summarized as the city of the Nagas in Polynesian lore. I think it's Polynesian. Which, yeah, this one was a little tricky to get through because, there was a known bug in it. But once you had gotten through all that, you find out that Laura's father had been there prior. And he ruined any sort of map there, but he brought whatever he found there back to Croft Manor, which Lara goes down into the crypt and finds out that he had gotten another gauntlet, which she's able to charge for a brief usage. But then the house is under attack. She also discovers for the first time thralls. Undead creatures powered by ether. I may be saying that wrong. These things are nasty. They're lethal. You can knock them down, they'll get back up after a few moments. So you have to take a few extra steps to finally defeat it. Of course, Lara will go up, get out of there, find the place is all afire. You have to escape, not knowing that who did it. At least Lara doesn't know who did it. Not until she's almost shot by Zip, because the attacker looked exactly like Lara, enough to make Zip think it was really her. Lara goes back in to get one other item and try and find Alistair, but when she finds the item and sees Alistair, her doppelganger kills him. To which Lara says, "This was a doppelganger, and the only time I saw that was back in, Atlantis." So, Lara then makes her way to another location to, quote, get said power charger, as well as Thor's hammer. It's everything. The hammer is the thing that will be needed to basically kick Natla's butt, as Lara figures. Of course, she takes a side trip to Zabalba. That's where she gets the power booster to be able to use the hammer. As the hammer was located in catacombs on another island. An island that in a cold area has one of the largest keys I've ever seen be used to open the door. We also get our first encounters with Yetis and a lot of hammers, truly linking it to Thor. A lot better than what the original St. Francis's Folly did. Of course, once Lara has the hammer, she goes up back to another ship, similar to the first, that we saw earlier, basically fight her way into Natla. Of course, Natla, quote, is now fed up with Amanda, has the doppelganger take Amanda out, apparently, and tells Laura, you know, the location where she can get all her answers. Another temple that initially appears underwater. Once you get in, you discover the secrets. Laura gets close enough and finds what looks like her mother. But it isn't her. Not anymore. It's a thrall. Something that lad set up because she just wanted to truly crush Laura before, you know, setting Jormungandr into motion. Jormungandr is not a serpent, but is the central point for all the tectonic plates. Activating the device that was there would literally cause cataclysms. So Laura's almost being beaten by her doppelganger until Amanda shows up, having survived her little fight, and using the power she has, even though her monster's dead, to let Laura get to Natla. Amanda is not necessarily thrilled with helping Laura, but the alternative is the destruction of the world, and, well, she doesn't want that. To which comes the stopping the device, which is an epic puzzle in and of itself, with Natla shooting at you the whole damn time. I got to admit that this was a trial in and of itself, and I probably died multiple times trying to, get past that. It is more a puzzler than it is an epic battle, because how are you supposed to defeat Natla? Even the hammer is not necessarily enough to kick her ass. But in the end, you are able to stop the machine. Get a little help from Amanda. And Laura gets a lot of. Amanda does a lot of. They save the world, but they're going to get destroyed in the complex in the process. But Laura notices something. There's another area, a Dios, like the one they saw before at Bolivia. And Laura, now we can still get out of here. Need your help to do it. So they get out of there using a portal that takes them off to Tibet, where all this began in the first place for Laura. Now, of course, Amanda's almost ready to start things up again. It's like, after all this, we're going to go back to this. Even Amanda knows it's just makes no sense, and leaves. Laura saying goodbye to her mother one last time and then leaves. which technically ends the main story of the timeline, but not the whole timeline. Because in an exclusive that was only for like Xbox users, we get a follow-up where Natla had, quote, survived that encounter but was grievously wounded. Doppelganger takes her to a healing pod to hopefully heal. And Natla gives the Doppelganger a last order to fill. Kill Lara and kill yourself. Which the Doppelganger now will go after Lara. But Lara had one trick up her sleeve. She had figured things out, learned the commands that Jacqueline had used from other research that was done. And she manages to, quote, wrestle control of the Doppelganger from Nat, basically take over control. And Lara gives this Doppelganger a new, follow your heart, your soul, if you have one, and you'll accept no more orders. You're free. Which I'm sure was not something the Doppelganger expected from Lara Croft. But in the end, she takes these words to heart. And she agrees and goes back to where Natla is in the pod to heal. Sabotages it and leaves Natla to die in the very blue ichor that killed so many other things that touches it. The timeline of the Legend Anniversary Underworld setting is itself very complete. And I can see why this series is not necessarily among the high rated of the various franchises. This is a timeline you either love or you loathe, it seems. It's like, to some would call it the red-headed stepchild, to use an old adage. Not loved. Which I don't know why you wouldn't love a redhead. A redhead is a very beautiful thing, if you ask me. Some of the best characters I've ever seen in media have been redheads. But that's me. It has its bugs, but it does some things very right. Yes, some of the bugs could be game breakers. I mean, I literally had to purchase a controller to finish Anniversary the first time I played it. And that was for the podcast games that my mom found. It had some innovative things that, may have been console exclusive. I mean, you could do, for Anniversary on the Wii, you had rubbings that you could collect with using the motion controls. It had some neat features like the adrenaline boost. You had some, at least, visuals with how much health some characters had in some of the games. yes, the limitations in the beginning of only having like 3 health packs was a downside in the first game. I'm glad they got past that. But the game was the story for this timeline is beautiful. I'm not, that's about a plus for it. Having some more puzzle based things was, in my mind, a plus. And giving a little, diving more into Laura's backstory was a help there. The LAU timeline is an interesting little thing to play. I will recommend you purchasing it on Steam if you wish to play it. As there are some, I did run in some issues with the GOG version. But overall, it is a fun little game. It is a trilogy to experience if you want to experience all of the Tomb Raider franchise. The story is very fulfilling. I can say that. It's got your ups and downs. Laura's mother's death. And of course, then Alistair's death in Underworld. You get some good little banter between her associates. You don't get it in Anniversary, of course. But I mean, honestly, it's fun. It was fun to listen to them banter. Zip get on Alistair's nerves with the whole Excalibur thing. The only thing I didn't enjoy much in Underworld was the giant ass spiders. But of course, that's me. But it is a fun series. It shows more that her parents were more loving about her love of archaeology. Whereas, in the previous timeline, I think they were just amusing her and hoping it got out of her system. She was supposed to be a proper lady, the British nobility. And that didn't happen. But this timeline here, it's very good. Some people would say she doesn't have enough sass in it. I mean, she's not willing to, you know, shoot people to death. I think that just adds to her humanity in this timeline. Where in the previous, Laura will go to great lengths, especially if she's found she's been used. In this one, even if she's used, she doesn't necessarily want to fully resort to killing unless if there was a way to talk it out. I mean, can you talk it out with 20 mercenaries? No. Can you talk it out with one person? Possibly. But that's all I'm going to say about the Tomb Raider Legend Anniversary Underworld timeline. I mean, if you want to play them in a chronological order, I suppose you play Anniversary first, then Legend, then Underworld. But thing was, is though, Anniversary could have just been a standalone game. But Legend leaves you with wanting more to look into. And that's all I'm going to say about that timeline. It's a very good timeline. Sadly, the bugs that were in this timeline probably just left a nasty taste in some people's mouth. But until next time, take care all and have fun.